Hello, stream. All right, we are beginning the final read-through of Yerrin. Hello, Rhea. Greetings. Rhea, I don't know if you're intentionally referencing it, but did you read the PS on today's email? I'm very proud of that one. All right. Enough faffing about. Let's get started. Cover looks good. Yerrin, Garrett Robinson. Copyright 2017 by Legacy Books. All rights reserved. This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, businesses, events, or locales purely coincidental. Reproduction in whole or part of this publication without express written consent is strictly prohibited. A while ago I took out the call to action in the copyright, and you know, it could go back in. You have Underrealm on the brain? I can't imagine why. To my wife, who gave me this idea, to my children, who just make life better, to my parents, who are the only reason I'm able to do anything at all, to Johnny, Sean, and Dave, who told me to write, and to my rebels, don't forget why you left the woods. Books of Underrealm by Garrett Robinson. See all novels in the world of Underrealm. Visit underrealm.net/books. The Nightblade Epic, Nightblade Mystic, Darkfire, Shadeborn, Weremage, Yerrin, the Academy Journals, The Alchemist's Touch, The Mind Mage's Wrath, The Fire Mage's Vengeance, Tales of the Wanderer, Bloodlust, Stoneskin, Hellskin, Chronological Order, Nightblade Mystic, Darkfire, Shadeborn, Bloodlust, The Alchemist's Touch, Is that right? Shadeborn, Bloodlust, the Alchemist Touch, the Mind Mage's Wrath, Weremage, Stoneskin, the Fire Mage's Vengeance, Hellskin, Yerrin. Yes. 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 That map looks good. Whoops. Oh, that's a titch annoying, isn't it? Oh, that's all right. I'm very excited. Oh. There's how the map looks in the ebook. Pretty good, I'd say. Who knows? It's a mystery. Title page, Yerrin, A Book of Underrealm, Garrett Robinson. That looks good. All right, here we go. Hey, what's up, Miak? Ha, ha, ha. Oh my god, really? What? Oh, son of a bitch. It's on my other account. It's on my gaming account that I got that emote. Oh my god, shut up. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Shut up! There we go. God almighty. Okay, back to work. Focus command. Chapter 1. Winter had always had a way of being especially cruel to Lauren, and so she hid now with her friends from its bitter snows, which was not to say that they had entirely avoided the rough weather. For weeks they had pursued the merchant Damaris back and forth across the northwestern reaches of the kingdom. Through snows and storms they followed her, from tiny villages to modest cities, through woods and over fields and across rivers. Always Damaris had remained just ahead of them, taunting them, ever out of reach. Now they had a room at an inn in the town of Sidwan, far south of Feldamar and west of the Great Rock Mountains. They had arrived only the night before. Some might have called the dwelling modest, but Lauren thought that would be far too generous. She guessed the inn's master rarely had his floors scrubbed or bedding changed, for everything reeked. 2 threadbare pallets of straw lay on the floor, but Lauren could almost see the fleas crawling across them. They ate rarely of the inn's food, which caused their bellies to roil and complain, but instead ate from the rations they had kept in good supply during their travels. Of all the inn's offerings, only the ale was passably good, and so of that they drank freely. Hey, what's up, Lauren? Lauren's little council... Other Lauren. Lauren's little council was even smaller than normal, for Uzo and Shun were away at the moment. Chet sat on one of the pallets, idly rubbing his arms and staring at nothing. His oft-washed skin was red and raw, but mayhap not so bad as it had been last week. Lauren hoped that was a good sign. Jem had gone to fetch himself a snack. The boy's stomach seemed to be made of iron, and he was the only one who did not turn up his nose at the common room's meager fare. Annis, as was her custom these days, sat on the floor with a map of the 9 kingdoms. With her forefinger, she traced lines between towns and cities, her eyes darting back and forth, her lips slightly parted but never moving. Every so often she would wince and shake her head, then return to tracing routes that were clear only in her own mind. Lauren worried about her. Annis's determination to find Damaris had neared obsession. The merchant was her mother, and that made her feel a greater burden than all the rest of them. Other than Chet, of course. Lauren sighed, kicking her boots against the floor and toying idly with the knives at her belt. The blades were new, purchased at the first blacksmith they had found after entering the kingdom of Dorsey. They were neither so fine as the dagger on the back of her belt, nor as modest as the hunting knife in her boot. The smith had balanced them perfectly for throwing. Half of her wished to go out behind the inn and practice, but she feared to be away if Uzo and Shiun returned with news. She thought of the one who had taught her to throw knives in the first place. Her fingers were coiled as though the blades had burned her. It is a useful skill, she told herself. It does not matter who taught it to you. She looked at Chet and wondered if she truly believed that. He seemed to feel her gaze upon him, for he looked up at her. He tried to give her a smile, but it came out frail. I think I may try to sleep, said Lauren. His smile faltered. Oh, have you rested poorly? It has been a long road, and we have ridden hard. Yet too much sleep can make one even wearier. Lauren spread her hands. There's little else to do just now. Now his smile died at last, and he stared at the floor. Those are pretty words, but not true ones. We both know why you want to sleep. Yet that is not how the dreams work, or so you have said. I suppose not, said Lauren, but we know I cannot have one if I am awake. He subsided, turning away from her. Lauren's pulse had quickened, and she forced herself to take a deep breath. It was not Chet's fault that her sleep had been dreamless, but she was frustrated, and it made her irritable. A small part of her feared what the dreams might mean and where they might be leading her, but the greater part of her wanted any clue, any hint about where Damaris might be. If that knowledge came to her in a dream, she thought she could accept whatever harm her visions might bring. Or so she thinks. She sighed and pushed herself up from the floor, going over to sit beside Chet, but not too close, not where she might accidentally brush against him. I want a clue that will lead us to the end of this road, said Lauren. I want to bring Damaris to justice. Chet shook his head slowly. I suppose I do as well, but will that truly be the end? Lauren gritted her teeth. Damaris's capture would not entirely end the war, and they both knew it. It will be a good first step, and the dreams will help. When they come, we will use whatever I see to find her. I swear it. Chet drew a breath as though he was about to speak, but then the door flew open. Lauren shot upright, hand going to one of her knives, but it was only Jem, stumbling in with a tray of food and ale. He kicked the door behind him, and it closed with a loud thud. Annis's head jerked up, but the moment she saw Jem, she flushed and turned away. Lauren scowled. Sky above, Jem. Are you trying to wake the whole inn? Wake them, said Jem, eyes wide and innocent. It is scarcely sundown. If anyone is abed already, let them rise so that they may know how lazy I think them. This from the boy who has spent more time asleep. More time asleep than all the rest of us combined, said Chet. He chuckled and shook his head. It warmed Lauren's heart to see. Whatever chill had settled between him and Lauren, he had lost none of his affection or good cheer towards the children, nor even towards Uzo and Shiun. But that is another matter entirely, said Jem, lifting his chin. I am unquestionably the handsomest of our party, and retaining such beauty requires more rest. That is not laziness, but only due consideration for the beautification of your lives. What noble sacrifice, what a selfless gift, said Lauren, clutching her hands over her heart. Then she snatched the tray with one hand and shoved him gently with the other. Now, if you truly wish to make all our lives better, still your flapping lips for a little while, and let us drink in peace. Jem rubbed his chest where she had pushed him, but his smile remained. I suppose I can do that, he said. After all, my lips have flapped enough for one day. In the common room, where one or two of my tales were most welcome. Lauren's heart skipped. What tales? Jem, what have you... He waved a hand airily. I did not tell him who we are, or where we are bound, or why, but I heard some patrons in the common room discussing our black-cloaked friend. I gave them a few nods and winks at the right times, and told them some small stories that I had heard and they had not. Stories you heard, said Lauren, arching an eyebrow. It is more accurate to say that you lived them. Hey, Kristen! Jem spread his hands. They are different words, but they mean much the same thing. Lauren sighed. Jem had been spreading tales everywhere, not only since they entered Feldamar, but a long time before that, ever since the two of them had escaped from the city of Cabras. She had long ago given up trying to stop him. Jem snatched 2 mugs of ale from the tray and went across the room to Annis. He stopped more than a pace away, looking at her fitfully. One foot scraped at the back of his other ankle to scratch an itch. He wore thick and warm shoes, recently bought, a necessity against the snow outside, but clearly something he was unused to. Gradually, Annis became aware of the room's quiet. At last she looked up to see Jem, her cheeks darkened, and she quickly looked back down at the map. Would you like to have a drink? Said Jem, proffering one of the mugs. No, thank you. Or wait, I suppose so. Annis's hand jerked back and forth a few times as though her mind kept changing even in the act of reaching for the mug. At last she gripped the handle and pulled it towards her, but the movement was jerky and a bit of ale spilled over to splash on a corner of the map. Blast, said Jem. He knelt and tried to scrub at the stain. I am sorry. No, it was my fault, said Annis. She took a corner of her sleeve and reached to wipe away the ale, but as her hand brushed Jem's, they both yelped. Jem leaped up as though stung and scuttled away. Then he realized he'd forgotten his own mug on the floor beside her, and he darted back to get it. He retreated to the farthest pallet and sank into it, studiously inspecting his drink. Lauren winced at the exchange. Things had grown more and more awkward since Annis's disastrous confession of love in Feldamar. Jem clearly felt awful for rebuffing her, and Annis seemed determined to forget the whole thing had ever happened, but it hung between them always, and what had once been a bosom friendship was now an ever-strained and painful interaction. It did no good to dwell on such thoughts. Lauren went over to Annis and sat across from her, ignoring the girl's flushed cheeks. She studied the map, but it meant very little to her. Lauren could recognize the drawings, the mountains and rivers, the lakes and oceans, but she had never learned to read, and so the names of places were a mystery. But Annis looked at the map as though it were an elaborate tapestry, with every detail plain before her and no mystery hidden, or at least none but the greatest mystery of all, the one that kept her hovering over the map day and night, trying to unravel the secret. "How goes your search?" said Lauren. "Have you any idea why Damaris might have come here?" "If I had, I would have said something," grumbled Annis. She sighed and rubbed her eyes with the heels of her hands. "I'm sorry, I grow ever more frustrated the longer this goes on. Damaris's course through Dorsey makes no sense. First she goes in one direction and then another. It seems clear she's trying to throw us off her trail, but even if that is the case, I feel I should be able to guess her ultimate aim. Yet the only thing I can see is that she always goes farther south, and there is no place in the south of Dorsey that makes sense as her final destination." "What if it's a ruse, then?" said Chet. "What if her ultimate aim lies farther north and she plans to double back?" Annis pursed her lips. "I've considered it, of course, but there is nothing significant west of the Great Rocks, and I do not think she would go east of them. There lies Dorsey's capital, Danfon. There is no greater concentration of officers of the High King's Law in the kingdom. She would put herself at far too great a risk. That, I believe, is why she has restricted herself to smaller towns like this one." "I think even the word small overstates the case," said Jem. "Tiny might be more accurate. I've seen no horses in Sidwan besides our own. Lauren sighed and shook her head. "I am less worried about where Damaris is going and more worried about what she means to do." "Are we so sure she means to do anything?" said Chet. "I thought her goal was to take Yawamba, but we chased her from there. She may simply be trying to escape." "Never," said Annis. "Oh, I am certain she wants to evade us, but there is something else at work here. There always is. She has not given up on whatever goal drove her to Yawamba in the first place." "But what goal?" said Lauren. "Something to do with the war, no doubt." "Yes, but that is far too general," said Annis. "She will never be an ally of the High King, not after what she has done, but she may not be on the side of the necromancer any longer either. She seems aimless, but that is only because we do not know what larger game she is playing." "Could she be making her way towards one of your family's holdings in Dorsey?" said Lauren. "She could, except that those are few and far between, and none are very grand," said Annis. "I think that may be why she wanted Yawamba. She could have given it to the necromancer as a great stronghold in the war. Or she might have meant to lurk there in safety while the war raged on without her. Without knowing the machinations of all our enemies, it becomes harder to predict what any one of them is doing." "I, for one, doubt she still stands by the necromancer," said Chet. "The High King has declared war at last, and 8 kingdoms stand behind her. Not even a great fool would join the wrong side of that fight, and your mother is not a great fool." The room went silent, and Lauren shot Chet a look. Annis dropped her gaze to the floor, and Chet's cheeks flushed. They had taken to avoiding the fact that Damaris was Annis's mother. It was not a comfortable truth for the girl to hear, and even less so now that their mission was to bring her before the king's law, a law that was always swift and always fair, but not always merciful. "In any case," said Lauren, "all our wonderment might be for nothing. If she is indeed here in Sidwan, and we can bring her to heel, then her ultimate aim becomes of far less consequence." As if in answer to her words, they heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Footsteps stopped outside the door, which opened to reveal Uzo. The dark young spearman wore plain clothes for travel and had changed his red mystic cloak for one of brown. Snow dusted his shoulders, already melting into little droplets at his feet. "It is time," he said. Shionis found her. They were on their feet in an instant. Chet snatched up his quarterstaff from where it leaned by the door, and Jem began to buckle on his little sword. Almost too little now, thought Lauren. The boy was growing by leaps and bounds. She had already noted that he needed new clothes, and now it seemed he should have a new blade as well. Lauren turned to Annis. "Wait here for us. We will return soon." "Be sure that you do," said Annis. "Sky above, I hope we have found her this time." "We've never been so close," said Lauren. "If the worst should happen and she evades us again, we should catch her in the next step." Annis dropped her gaze to the floor. Her escape would not be the worst that could happen, at least not to my mind. Lauren gave a little smile and stepped forwards to wrap the girl in a quick hug. "We will be safe. See that you are the same." She turned, cloak whirling about her, and followed Uzo from the inn. Chapter 1 done! Chapter 2, Sidwan was a tiny cluster of inns and craft shops that might not have existed at all, except that a bend in the nearby road met a bend in the nearby river, and the fertile land all around was perfect for farming. Farmers thus formed the largest portion of the town's populace and of the patrons in its taverns and shops. Travelers would stop in the town for a drink or to repair a shoe or harness, and in the evenings the locals would gather around to hear news of the wider world. Lauren and her friends had worked hard to dissuade such interest. The less notice anyone took of them, the better. Stop dinging! Not a euphemism. Near the center of the town was its largest inn, a stone building and one of the few that had a second floor. That was where Shion and Uzo had gone in to search for Damaris, but Uzo turned away, leading them down a solid side street toward the edge of town. "She was not at the inn," said Lauren. "No, though we wasted a fair amount of time searching there. It was only by chance that we saw 2 dark men passing through the town. They did not wear green cloaks, but they looked and moved like trained fighters. Mayhap they had been sent to fetch supplies for the next stretch of the journey. In any case, Shion followed them to one of the finer houses on the edge of town. There we saw many more guards and some horses in the stables, and soon we spotted Damaris in one of the windows. "It is her, then," said Lauren. A thrill of excitement ran through her. Their long hunt that had now stretched across 2 kingdoms might finally be over. But not yet. First they had to capture Damaris, and that would be no easy feat. The merchant traveled with several guards, hardly an army, but more than the paltry 5 of Lauren's party. And there was always the threat that Gregor had rejoined her. Gregor, the bodyguard, had not been in the stronghold of Yawamba, but if he had heard what happened there, Lauren knew he would cross the sky and the dark to be by Damaris' side again. Sky and the darkness to be by Damaris' side again. His devotion to her dwarfed even his massive size. He was a terrifying fighter, and Lauren feared to face him even with all her friends at her back. If Gregor was here, Lauren knew they might not all survive, if any of them did. Uzo stopped them behind a cobbler's shop, and he and Lauren peered around the corner. Before them was a home that would have been modest in any of Underrealm's great cities, but it looked like an opulent jewel here in Sidwan. Lauren smirked to herself. Even when on the run, it seemed Damaris could not help her taste for finery. 2 guards stood at the front door, and even though they did not wear the family Yerrin's colors, they had the right look. We saw her upstairs. Lauren jumped. Shion's voice had come from nowhere, and now she crept up behind them. The woman was a scout beyond peer, and Lauren still marveled at her ability to move silently, to see even the smallest sign of Rokori's trail in the wilderness. Chet had grown up a hunter, and he had taught Lauren the ways of tracking a beast. But Shion's knowledge eclipsed even his. Jem's face had paled. "You move more quietly than an elf." "I doubt it, though I have not seen one," said Shion. "Are you certain it was Damaris?" said Lauren. "No," said Shion. "I have never seen her either. But she was a Yerrin woman in fine garb, and the others certainly seemed to obey her commands." "Very well," said Lauren. "We should take the house, and quickly." "One thing more," said Shion. "There is a man I have not seen before. He is large, and he wears more armor than the other guards." Lauren shuddered. "Gregor." Shion's mouth twisted. "I thought it might be from the description you gave." "He is only a man," said Uzo. "Even a giant may be taken by surprise." "You do not know him," said Lauren. "We must be cautious. He is twice as vicious as he is large, and he will defend Damaris with his dying breath." "Then I will make him take that breath." Uzo's hand tightened on the haft of his spear. Lauren's jaw clenched. "Kill only if you have no other choice. The more of them we capture, the more information we can gather about the High King's enemies." Uzo rolled his eyes, but Shion nodded and spoke for them both. "As you say, Nightblade." There was a long pause. After a moment, Shion and Uzo glanced at each other, their brows raised. At last, Uzo cleared his throat. "It might be best to secure the bottom floor first. That way we can watch to make sure she does not slip away." Of course, Lauren was supposed to come up with a plan of attack and tell the rest of them what to do. In Feldamar, Naya had given orders when it came to fighting, and Lauren was still unused to it. Her cheeks flamed suddenly, and she hoped they attributed it to the cold air. Whoops. "That seems wise," she said. "Do not climb to the second floor until the first is in our hands. And, Jem, you must run into town and summon the constables." "What?" said Jem. "But there are only 2 of them, and they hardly seem to be trained fighters. They will be a little help." She fixed them with a hard look. "They represent the king's law, and we will need them to restore order once the fighting is done." She extended a hand to Uzo. He gave her his mystic badge, and Lauren placed it in Jem's hand. "Give them this so that they know you are not some urchin boy." He folded his arms and pouted at his feet. "I am an urchin boy," he muttered. But he turned and left them, slipping through the buildings back towards the town center. Lauren motioned the others off, and they spread out to attack the building from both sides. Lauren approached the left corner of the manor with Chet close behind her. She drew one of the throwing daggers from her belt. One of the guards was only a pace away. Lauren leaped from her hiding place and brought the hilt of her dagger crashing down hard on the back of the woman's head. The guard fell senseless to the ground. The other guard whirled, scrabbling for his sword. Before he could muster the wits to shout, Uzo pounced from behind. His arm wrapped around the guard's throat, and he squeezed. The man's eyes rolled back, and Uzo lowered him to the ground. 2 taken care of, and easily," said Chet. "Do not gloat until it is done," said Lauren. "Fate despises the boastful." "The back door," said Shion. "Less chance of a heavy guard." Lauren nodded. "Uzo, stay here to prevent escape through the front." The rest of them moved single file around the building. No guards were posted at the rear. Peeking in through a window, Lauren saw a small sitting room with a fireplace. 2 guards sat on chairs there, holding their hands out towards the flames. She looked back at Shion and Chet and held up 2 fingers. They nodded. Lauren gripped the door's latch and looked at the crack of the door jamb. There was no lock or bar. She lifted the latch and threw the door open. Both guards shot up from their chairs with a cry. One was a spindly woman, the other a stout man. Chet struck first, his quarterstaff cracking down on the spindly one's shoulder. She grunted with the pain, but she managed to draw her sword before he swung again. The stout man launched himself at Lauren. She sidestepped his first swing, but it was no wild attack. These were disciplined soldiers. His reverse swing almost caught her arm, and she had to drop to her knee to avoid it. Sheehan leapt into the fray, landing 2 quick punches at the man's throat. He fell back, gasping. Lauren took advantage, shooting up to kick him hard in the groin. He wheezed and fell. She kicked him full in the face, and he rolled over unconscious. The 2 of them leaped in to help Chet, whose opponent was forcing him back with wild swings. In a moment, Sheehan had disarmed her, and soon she went down to a punishing strike of Chet's quarterstaff. They heard a commotion from the front of the house. 2 guards burst into the back room, swords already drawn. They paused in shock for half a moment. Shunk. The tip of a spear burst through one of the guard's chest. She looked down at the spearhead, eyes wide. The other guard only had a moment to be surprised before Sheehan leaped forwards and planted her short sword in his gut. Both of them sank to the ground, their last breaths gurgling. Behind them stood Uzo, a grim smile on his lips as he gripped his spear. Lauren glared at him. That was not necessary. Uzo shrugged. You said we needed to be fast. Sheehan said nothing, wiping her sword clean on one of the guard's cloaks. Lauren shook her head and made for the stairs. The staircase was short and open at the top, so she crept up carefully. There was little chance that anyone upstairs had missed the noise of all the fighting, but no one had come down. She hoped that meant there were no warriors above. Mayhap Gregor was not here after all, but that seemed too fortunate to hope for. She reached the top of the stairs. A large foyer stretched before her, and at the other end of it was a guard. There were no lamps lit here, and the windows cast him in a large silhouette. Lauren's steps faltered, and her throat went dry with fear, but it only lasted a moment, and then her eyes adjusted to the darkness. The man before her was large, truly, and he carried a sword and shield. But it was not Gregor. He did not have the ice-gray eyes, and a thick beard covered his face. Though he still stood taller than any of Lauren's party, he was nowhere near the size of Gregor. A leaf washed through her just as suddenly as the fear had. It seemed the bodyguard had not yet found Damaris. Leave now, said the man, and you may live. Lauren could not help herself. She snorted. I've heard the same promise from foes far more dangerous. I've never taken them up on their offer, yet here I stand. He growled and stepped forwards, but there was a hiss and an arrow planted itself in his thigh. He roared and fell to one knee. Glancing back, Lauren saw that Sheehan had taken her bow from her back and was already drawing another arrow. Chet stepped forwards. When the man tried to swing his long sword, Chet blocked it with his staff. Another strike knocked the blade from his hand, and then he cracked the butt of his staff right between the man's eyes. His head snapped back, and he fell. Uzo snickered. Leave now, and you may live. Honestly. Lauren allowed herself to share a smile with him. She motioned them all forwards. Come, it is almost over. The final door opened easily under her hand. Lauren stepped through it into the master bedroom, and there she stopped. A woman stood before her, but it was not Damaris. She wore clothes just as fine as the merchant, and there was something similar in the haughty tilt of her head. Mayhap she was another Yerrin, but Lauren had never seen her before. Lauren growled in frustration. A ruse. Darkness take that woman. She knew we would follow her here, and she set a false trail to lead us to this impostor. She shook her head and gestured at the woman. Capture her. She may still have information that can help. But the woman did not recoil in fear. Instead, she smiled, and then her eyes glowed black. Stop. Everyone in the room froze. Lauren frowned, her eyes flicking to her friends. They stood rooted in place as though held by some unseen force. Uzo was even in mid-stride, but there he remained. The woman spoke again. Kill each other, but leave the Nightblade alive. Slowly, Chet, Uzo, and Sheehan turned towards each other, raising their weapons. Lauren's blood ran cold. The woman was a wizard, and she had eaten mage stones. The black glow in her eyes said that much, but this was some magic Lauren had never seen before, and her mentor, Jordell, had never told her of it. But her dagger kept her safe. This wizard could not know of the weapon, an ancient tool of the mystic mage hunters and proof against all spells. It had saved her life from a mad wizard before, and it kept her from enchantment now. She drew the dagger and leaped forwards. The Yerrin woman barely had an instant to look surprised before Lauren brought the hilt crashing down on her temple. Her eyes rolled back and she folded like parchment. Lauren whirled. She wanted to shoot her bow in such close quarters and was attacking Uzo with her sword. Uzo managed to keep her at bay while also trying to strike Chet with his spear, but Chet was defending himself well with his staff, at least for now. Their movements were slow, sluggish, as though they fought to throw off the mental commands they had been given. Stop, she cried. The woman has no power over you. They acted as if they had not heard. The command had been planted, and they would not stop until they carried it out. Lauren leaped and took Chet in a flying tackle. She winced as his head cracked on the wall. Chet cried out, groping gingerly at the back of his head. Slowly his eyes focused on Lauren. What happened, he said. I do not know, said Lauren, but stop the others. She leaped up and dashed at Uzo and Sheehan. With Chet out of the way, they had turned their full attention on each other. Lauren thrust herself in between both of them. They both froze, weapons held high. The wizard had commanded them to leave the Nightblade alive, and now they could not attack each other without striking her. Chet gripped Sheehan from behind in a tight hold. Her sword arm dangled, useless, but her other hand came up, scrabbling for Chet's eyes. She scratched his face, and he grimaced. Chet, said Lauren. She lunged, trying to pull Sheehan's hand away. Uzo took advantage of her distraction to move around her, and slowly a spear came forwards, poking for Sheehan's gut. Then, from outside the room, Lauren heard the pounding of footsteps making their way up the stairs. More guards, she thought. Her heart sank. She and her friends could not fight their way out, while two of them were determined to kill each other. A voice came from outside. Lauren? Her pulse skipped. Jem, in here. The boy burst into the bedroom. On his heels were two constables in red leather armor. Both of them huffed and wheezed mightily. It appeared they had run all the way here. Uzo and Sheehan are enchanted, she said. Stop them, but do not hurt them badly. Excuse me. With the help of Jem and the constable, she and Chet managed to pry Shun and Uzo apart. Then Lauren remembered how Chet had come out of the enchantment. She went to Uzo and punched him full in the face, not as hard as she could, but hard enough. He recoiled from the blow, and then his eyes cleared. He rubbed at his jaw. What? Did you hit me? Lauren sighed with relief. I did, and you will have to forgive me. She went to Shun, who was still trying to fight off Chet and the other constable. Balling a fist one more time, Lauren struck her. Shun blinked hard as the enchantment passed away. You were all gripped by some spell, said Lauren. It came from the wizard. I've never seen anything like it. Mind word, Shun spat on the floor. A mentalist power gained by eating mage stones. It lets them control the will of others. Lauren shuddered. I'm glad we rid you of it in time. Uzo gave Lauren an odd look. It did not seem to affect you. Lauren kept her face carefully neutral. Jardel had often warned her against revealing her dagger to anyone. It must have been a weak enchantment. It was, said Shun, else we would not have been freed from it so easily, and her magic must have been weakened further by trying to control more than one person at a time. Uzo's curious expression lightened, much to Lauren's relief, and he shook his head. Sky save us from wizards. We should have brought a mage hunter. Lauren had nearly forgotten about the constables, but now one of them stepped forwards, a large man with a drooping mustache. As he studied the prone Yerrin woman, confusion made his lips twist and jump, and the mustache shivered like a dying squirrel's tail. I beg your pardon, but what exactly happened here? Everyone in this house is a member of the family Yerrin, said Lauren. They are criminals under the king's law, and that one is an abomination. She pointed at the wizard. Both constables blinked at Lauren before giving each other an odd look. An abomination, said Lauren. An eater of mage stones? They jumped and took an involuntary step away from the woman. Lauren sighed. She is harmless now. Blindfold her and bind her before she wakes. That will keep her from being able to use her magic. But do it quickly and do not remove the blindfold for any reason. Do you have a jail here? Yes, my lady, and we will secure them right away. The large constable motioned to his companion. Fetch some helping hands from the village, and be quick. I leave it in your capable hands, said Lauren. She beckoned to her friends, leading them down the stairs. Capable hands, said Jem once they were out of earshot. I do not know that I share your assessment. Lauren frowned at him as she led them out behind the house. We will remain here for a moment, at least until all the Yerrins are taken into custody. Chet shuddered. That woman, her magic was terrifying. It was as if my body was not my own. Be thankful she was a weak wizard, said Shun, else it would have taken more than a simple knock on the head to remove her spell. Lauren pursed her lips. You know something of this mind word. Are you a mage hunter, then? Shun shook her head with a wry smile. No, but in my time in the Mystics I have met many who are. Some of their secrets are not for others to know, but they lose some of the smaller details from time to time, if you get them drunk enough. I'm glad to know it, said Lauren. There may be more dark wizards ahead in our future. There are too many in our past, if you ask me, muttered Jem. Lauren looked away from the house over the snow-covered farmlands that ran to a forest in the south. A long breath escaped through her nose, and her hands formed fists before she managed to relax them. Chet saw the movement, and he frowned. Damaris was not here. No, said Lauren. Did he think she did not know that? We will find her. Lauren almost snapped at him, but she restrained herself just in time. I need a moment. She began to walk south. Chet took a half step forwards. Where are you going? You should not be alone. She glanced back at him. I will not be long. I need to relieve myself. He flushed, but his mouth remained a firm line. Still, someone should go with you. I will do it, said Shun. She slung her bow across her back and went to Lauren's side. They walked a road between two farms, their breath misting on the frosty air. A light fall of snowflakes danced around them, eddying in the wind of their passing. Snow lay in shallow drifts, and people here waited for spring's warmth to welcome new plantings. That would not be long now. The season's turn was nearly upon them. Soon they reached the outskirts of the forest. Lauren felt better the moment she stood beneath its boughs. She leaned back against a tree, folding her arms and staring into the far distance. Sidmon was reduced to the size of a candle, the lights of its home shining in protest against the approaching evening. Lauren blew another long sigh, enjoying the way it floated around her like smoke. The impostor was troubling. How long had they been following a false trail? Curse the visions from my dreams, she thought. Her foresight should have come as they rode across Dorsey, giving some clue that they no longer pursued Damaris. Lauren could not guess at the purpose of the visions, of course. Mayhap there was no purpose at all, but she needed every bit of help she could get, and if she must wrest that help from dreams and visions, she would, yet she seemed to have lost even that advantage. She uncleared her throat and turned away. I will give you some privacy. There is no need. I do not actually have to relieve myself. The mystic's eyes sparkled. That was obvious, but I thought I might help you keep up the pretense. Lauren's mood did not lighten. She only frowned harder and scuffed her boot in the snow. I thought we had her this time. Now she has slipped away, and who knows if we will find the trail again. We could not have done anything different than we did. Shion's tone was less reassuring than her words. She sounded irritated. Lauren glared at the ground. No doubt Shion blamed Lauren for losing the merchant, and why should she not? Lauren was in charge, yet this whole expedition seemed to have become a flight from one disaster to another. Jormund had left them some time ago, albeit at Lauren's orders, and two other members of their company were dead. Worse, one of them had turned out to be an enemy in disguise. Lauren should have known, should have seen, even without her visions. I will not rest until it is done, until Damaris is in our hands, in the hands of the king's law, and order is restored to the 9 kingdoms. Shion was silent for a long moment. That would be a great feat, she said at last. Lauren flushed. She had spoken like a silly girl. When had Underrealm ever been a place of perfect order? Border squabbles raged and bandit squadrons roamed, creating 1,000 conflicts great and small, and each led to bloodshed in the end. Yet they faced a far greater threat now, a war that might lay whole kingdoms low. Lauren had not started it, but she had taken a solemn vow to help finish it. But she did not say any of this to Shiyun. I suppose we have wasted enough time for them to think I did my business, she muttered. Let us return. She pushed off from the tree and strode north, Shiyun at her side. Chapter 2 done! The dream, Chapter 3, the dream took her. She stood on the high king's seat. Both moons hung full in the sky above her. The streets looked familiar, but she could not place them. Then she recognized the main road that crossed the city from east to west. She had passed this way when, again, she looked up at the moons. Yes, it was the night she had followed a wizard's trail across the seat. She had found a lock of hair embroidered on her dagger. Its magic led her east, but she had found nothing there. Dejected, she had returned to the palace, but not before visiting a tavern. She whirled. There was the tavern. A warm glow poured from the edges of its door, which was poorly mounted in the frame. But now a man leaned on the door. He was tall, his shoulders broad. Many knife scars crossed his arms and face, and even his nearly shaved head. He was clad all in black leathers, making it hard to see most of his body in the darkness, but his eyes were bright even at night. The glow was akin to mage light, yet Lauren had never seen anything quite like it. Before she could ask who he was, he laughed and pointed to her left. Lauren caught a flash of movement at the edge of her vision. She turned and saw a woman in a red cloak. Her brown hair was cut short in a bob, and her sleeveless shirt and vest showed her thick, muscular arms. Naya. Rage filled Lauren, a rage more terrible than she had ever felt while awake. She launched herself after Naya, who ducked into an alley. Lauren plunged into the darkness, pulling a mage stone from her cloak and eating it to gain night vision. Auntie stood there, no longer disguised as Naya. Her clothes had changed as well. Now she wore black robes in a style that looked somehow familiar, yet it was Auntie's thin, svelte form, her smooth brown skin and dyed blonde hair, and her eyes, which Lauren knew she could never forget. You, cried Lauren, you live. Auntie frowned at her. There was no recognition in her expression, no anger, only confusion. Who are you? She said. When I picture that happening in my head and like all of the everything that surrounds it, it's wonderful. Lauren screamed in rage. If the witch thought to deceive Lauren, she would find that a folly. If the witch thought to escape by deception, she would find that a folly. Lauren raised her dagger and leaped. Darkness take her vow not to kill. Auntie had died already, but Lauren would kill her again in her dream. She would do it 1,000 times and relish each kiss of the dagger. Auntie cried out in fear. She raised a hand and her eyes glowed. Lauren froze in midair, held in place by mind magic. But that was impossible. Auntie was a were-mage, not a mind mage. A wizard can only command one branch of magic. Before Lauren could scream her frustration, Auntie vanished. The magic released her, and Lauren fell hard to the ground. A hand took her shoulder, and she almost recoiled, but the hand was gentle, and it raised her up. Just as Lauren was about to scream her frustration, Auntie vanished. The magic released her, and Lauren fell hard to the ground. A hand took her shoulder, and she almost recoiled, but the hand was gentle, and it raised her up. Yes, they very much are. It's going to be very confusing. Yes, if I was George R.R. Martin, that is what would happen. But I'm not. And that's not going to occur. Do. Before stood a young woman of surpassing beauty, mayhap a few years older than Lauren, but this woman had none of the raw animal seduction of Auntie. Hers was a softer, gentler grace, a promise of great love and great kindness. She was clad in wispy, silky blue. Lauren wondered how the winter air did not freeze her to the bone. But it is not winter, she realized suddenly. She had visited the seat in early autumn. Recognition crashed in upon her. She had seen the woman before, not in true life, but in another dream. Lauren had seen her in a house of lovers, and she had wept for a man Lauren did not know. But now she did not weep. She only gave Lauren a sad smile. That was not the one you fear, said the woman. The one you fear is dead. You must remember that when you see her. What? Said Lauren. The woman smiled and leaned forward to kiss Lauren's cheek. Her sweet and pungent scent penetrated the air, and Lauren's heart went skipping. You shall have such a hard time without him, said the woman, but you will carry on, because you must. Please, said Lauren, please tell me what you mean. I do not understand. That boy, Chet, said a voice behind her, a voice she knew. He will leave, you know. Lauren whirled as she shot to her feet. Her surroundings shifted, and now she shivered in bitingly cold wind atop the mountain. Snow covered the landscape in all directions. Lauren's stomach lurched as she tried to place herself. She was in the Great Rocks. Nightbot timer is acting weird, and it's not doing the goal thing, so I'm just going to toss that in chat. Do. Surroundings shifted, and now she shivered and biting the cold wind atop the mountain. Snow covered the landscape in all directions. Lauren's stomach lurched as she tried to place herself. She was in the Great Rocks. The knowledge came crashing upon her the way it does in dreams. Her peak overlooked a mountain pass. They had taken such a pass through the mountains only a few weeks ago, chasing Damaris into Dorsey. She studied the mountains, trying to find something familiar, but she could see nothing. And then there was Mag. The woman stood in the snow, wind gusting around her. She wore a shirt of chain with thick fur-lined leather beneath it. Fresh blood covered a mighty spear in her right hand, and a battered shield hung on her left arm. A mournful expression pulled at her cheeks, the corner of her eyes. She stooped, seemingly weary beyond reckoning, nothing like the proud barmaid Lauren remembered from Northwood, where she and Albert had sacrificed themselves so that Lauren might live. Lauren fell to her knees. Tears sprang to her eyes unbidden. Mag, she whispered. Mag, is it really you? I cannot come with you, said Mag. Her eyes, too, glistened with tears. She sank to the ground and seized Lauren's shoulders, drawing her into an embrace. Darkness, take me, Lauren. I cannot come with you, and I cannot tell him. I cannot tell him. The lover in blue had once spoken the same words. Did they speak of the same man? Who was he? Who, Mag, said Lauren. Please, tell me. Mag only tossed her head, indicating something over Lauren's shoulder. Lauren turned to look. There stood the man in black, the one she had just seen outside the tavern on the seat. Now he leaned against a different building. It looked like a smithy. The sound of ringing hammers came from within, and smoke poured from its chimney. Its door was plain wood, but above it hung a blue sign with a yellow hammer. What was a smithy doing in the mountains? Your boy, said the man. My boy, said Lauren. Then she realized he might have answered her question. Do you mean Chet? Is that who you all keep speaking of? What do you wish to tell Chet? Your boy, said the man again. He gave a leering smile. You will have a hard time without him, I am sure. Fear coursed through her. Is he an... Your boy, he is leaving. She turned. Mag was gone. Only the dark man remained. Your boy, said the man again. He gave a leering smile. He is leaving, but then you have known that for a while. Grief coursed through her. You are lying, she said, striding towards the man in black. You know nothing of Chet, or of me. Ask him yourself. The man pointed over her shoulder. Lauren did not want to turn, to find her somewhere else again. To find herself somewhere else again with questions still unanswered, but the dream took hold and her body moved without her intent. Chet stood a pace away in the vast entry chamber of a grand palace. Its beauty nearly rivaled that of the High King's palace itself. But no one walked the halls and no guards stood at the doors. Red plaster formed its pillars and the roof peaked in two great curves. Just next to them stood wide doors leading outside. Beyond those doors, Lauren heard voices. She ignored them and took a step towards Chet. Chet, he said, are you all right? I'm leaving you, he said. You cannot follow me anymore. Lauren balked. What do you mean? You cannot follow me anymore. Chet, I have not followed you anywhere. You have followed me, no matter what He ignored her, stepping out the palace's front door. That door had been closed a moment ago, Lauren was certain. She followed Chet. Expecting to find herself in another strange place. But the world did not shift around her. Before her, a massive staircase led to a wide courtyard. The stairs were wider than some ships she had sailed on. On the other side of the courtyard stood a white plaster wall, and beyond that a grand city. She could see manor houses and military strongholds, as well as countless smaller homes and shops. Nearly all of them had the same sort of curving peak tile roofs as the palace, barely visible under the snow. But at the bottom of the steps sat Damaris and Gregor. Lauren panicked, looking for Chet. She must not let Damaris find him, but Chet had vanished, and Damaris had not looked the least bit interested in finding anyone. In fact, she and Gregor did not seem to have noticed Lauren. They sat at fine chairs beside a fine table, furniture that seemed more at home in a merchant's study than out here in a palace courtyard. They had a bottle of wine, and Damaris took delicate sips from a pewter goblet. Sid won, she said. Gregor shook his head. A failure. They overcame the wizard and captured or killed the rest. Damaris's eyes sharpened. But we gave Unwe Mage stones. How did they overcome her mind word? The bodyguards glowered deep. Words today. Glower deepened. I do not know. She was never very strong with the gift. Yet the mage stones. Damaris sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. Lauren's stomach did a turn. She had seen Annis make the same gesture countless times. I suppose we should not have expected it to be so easy. No, it appears they have more wit than I gave them credit for. Forgive me, but that is no surprise, said Damaris. You have always hated Lauren. It blinds you to her many admirable qualities, of which her resourcefulness is among the greatest. Gregor's jaw clenched. Just because she is cunning. Damaris chuckled and leaned over to pat his hand. Oh, do not get so angry. We knew Sid One might not be the end of it. This is not even a setback. It was planned for. Lauren thought she had gone unseen, but now Gregor looked up the steps at her. She quailed at the hatred she saw in his eyes. Suddenly his face changed, becoming the pale, decaying corpse she had seen in dreams before. His throat gaped from a wide wound drawn by a terrible blade. Lauren shuddered to think of a warrior who could best the giant in a fight. His throat rasped hideously as he spoke, and when the plan is complete, I shall have her at last. His throat gaped from a wide wound drawn by a terrible blade. Lauren shuddered to think of a warrior who could best the giant in a fight and inflict such damage upon him. His throat rasped hideously as he spoke, and when the plan is complete, I shall have her at last. Damaris, too, turned to look at Lauren. She smiled with teeth covered by a red stain. Lauren took it for wine until she realized it was blood. And you shall take your time with her. Lauren tried to run, but her legs would not answer the call of her mind. The ground began to shake beneath her feet. Through the courtyard's front gate poured soldiers in strange armor. More came marching from around the edges of the palace. They converged and made their way up the steps towards her, but they parted around the table where Damaris and Gregor sat, flowing like waves around a rock. They stared at Lauren from beneath horrible, twisted masks. A hand gripped Lauren's arm, making her jump. She turned and saw Naya. Lauren tried to recoil, but Naya held her firm. There's only one way out, she said. She was not panicked, but only solemn, even a little sad. She pulled Lauren back into the palace. They went in a dead run through the halls. Naya led her this way and that, past tapestries on the walls and fine urns on side tables until Lauren was hopelessly lost. Finally, Naya skidded to a halt with Lauren just behind her. Ahead of them stood wide double doors that opened to a great dining hall. The other end of the hall had another set of doors, beyond which was a courtyard, and beyond that a gate leading out into the city. No one blocked their path to freedom. Naya pulled Lauren away towards a small iron door in the wall. Lauren drew back. That way is safe, she said, pointing through the dining hall. That way is for the others, said Naya. It is not for you. Lauren looked around. There were no others. What do you mean? Come. Naya pulled her through the iron door. Inside was a small serving room with trays and dishes. There was no other exit. Lauren froze. Naya had trapped her. But then Naya went to the other end of the room and pulled down a shelf of dishes. Pottery smashed on the floor. Behind the shelf was a passageway, open but utterly dark inside. What is in there? Said Lauren. Naya did not answer. Instead, she pulled Lauren close and kissed her. Lauren's knees went weak, and she shivered as she had when their lips met into hob. All the knowledge of what had come after, of Naya's betrayal and her crimes against Chet, seemed for a moment not to matter. She gripped Naya's shoulders, and they clung to each other for a few precious heartbeats. Then Naya pushed Lauren into the passage. Lauren stumbled and fell. Before she could rise, Naya had lifted the shelf to cover the way out again. Lauren tried to push it away, but the shelf did not budge. Beyond the shelf, the room's door crashed open. Many feet came tramping in. There came the sound of many feet tramping in. The masked soldiers had found them, or rather they had found Naya. For Lauren was now hidden. The mystic's battle cry split the air, a berserker scream that Lauren had heard in the halls of Yawamba. She shuddered as she remembered how Naya had hacked down every foe in reach. Now she pictured the mystic tearing into the masked soldiers that must be pouring into the room. A blade pierced flesh with a sharp shunk. The berserker cry faltered. Naya laughed instead, a feral noise. Lauren heard still more soldiers dying, but at last Naya began to cough blood, and then her voice failed. There came the sound of many, many swords sinking into a body. Bitter tears ran down Lauren's cheeks, but she could do nothing for Naya now. She turned back to the passageway. It was utterly dark, but a mage stone still coursed through her veins. When she put her hand on her dagger, she could see as if by daylight. The passageway turned twice before ending at a ladder leading up. She climbed it and found herself in another passage like the one below. Again it turned, but she saw no branches to go in any other direction. After a little while, she reached the end. Before her hung a tapestry, and below it came a gentle breeze. A room lay beyond, but Lauren feared to enter it. Her only other choice was to return to the room full of soldiers and Naya's corpse. Lauren set her jaw and pushed the tapestry aside. She was in a chamber with 2 doors on either side leading to bedrooms. A third door led out to the rest of the palace. A small table rested in the middle of the room with a plush couch and 2 chairs surrounding it. 3 lamps lit the palace, but they were not on the walls. They sat on side tables at the edges of the room, and they cast many shifting shadows. Everything was of the finest make, just as Lauren had seen downstairs. At the other end of the room was a 4th door, leading to a balcony that overlooked a courtyard, the same courtyard Lauren had seen below on the other side of the dining hall. Standing in front of the door was Gregor. The giant faced out into the world beyond, but now he noticed Lauren, and he closed the door as he turned to her. Lauren turned and threw the tapestry aside, desperate to escape, but the passageway had vanished. Now she faced a wall of solid stone. She could not get out. This is the only way, said Naya. She stood just beside Lauren. Wounds covered her body, and her throat was cut, because, of course, Chet had cut it in Feldemar. But her voice did not rattle, her words did not rasp. She looked at Lauren with tears in her eyes. It is the only way out, she said again. Even the elves told you. Gregor stalked towards Lauren in the darkness. Chapter 3 done. Taking a short break. BRB. I've been on break for like 8 minutes. I don't even want to hear it. That is a good gif. I approve. Okay, back to it. I left it. You know what? We're not going to spend time talking about this. Chapter 4. The dream released her. Lauren woke in their room in Sidwan. For a moment she panicked, clutching at her thick blanket, but she did not scream. She kept still and silent, squeezing the blanket, feeling the rough wood floor upon which she lay. In a moment the terror passed. A long sigh rushed out of her, and she closed her eyes. She gained greater control of the fear each time, much to her relief. The terror of her dreams had been awful in the beginning. She did not miss that in the slightest. The others still slept, and she heard no noises from the inn downstairs. Slowly, quietly, she dressed herself and went to the common room. The innkeeper gave her barely a glance as she walked by him to the front door. Outside, the sky had just begun to gray. Dawn would come in an hour or two. Lauren went to the innkeeper and bought breakfast, bread and water only, for she did not trust the meat they served here. After eating, she went for a brief visit with Midnight in the stables. Modest though the inn was, the staff kept the horses well supplied with oats. Midnight nuzzled Lauren's shoulder as though offering comfort against the fear of her dreams. Lauren fed her an old apple she had saved. She returned to the room and waited for the others to wake. It did not take long. Shion and Uzo stirred before dawn, and Chet and Annis rose from their pallets soon after. Only Jem remained asleep, curled in the back corner and snoring loudly. Shion and Uzo, said Lauren, we will ride out today, go into town and replenish our supplies. Get a new water skin for Jem. His is nearly fallen apart. We shall need some more coins, said Shion. Lauren's gut did turn. Of course, she said lightly. She went to her saddlebag and pulled out her coin purse. A few forlorn weights fell into her palm. Lauren handed 2 of them to Shion. They were near the end of their money, and she dreaded having to fetch more. Lauren served the High King. By law, she could fetch more gold from any mystic stronghold, but Lauren had feared to turn to the mystics thus far, and she still did. The Red Cloaks would have to report the transaction to Cal of the family Endil, and that might cause a reunion with the Grand Chancellor that Lauren would rather put off. Cal had sent them chasing after Damaris in the first place. He had once mentored Jordell, and now the High King had placed Lauren under his command, but Lauren had been overzealous in her pursuit of Damaris, and Cal would be furious. Strictly speaking, Lauren had not disobeyed any direct order, but Cal had not granted permission for her rash course, and Lauren did not even capture Damaris. Now her best hope was to find the merchant before Cal found her, and hope her belated success might earn some forgiveness. Really? Because on my time... Well, whatever. She cast thoughts aside as Uzo and Shion left the room. The mystics knew nothing of her dreams. She meant to keep it that way. Once she was sure they were out of earshot, she went to the corner and roused Jem by shaking him hard. He came awake with a start, swatting at her with his scrawny arms. Well, what? He groused. What is it? I'm resting. Yes, and overlong, said Lauren. Get up, for we must all take counsel. I have had a dream. Hey, Nicole. I didn't even realize Nicole was here. Hi, welcome. And so have I, said Jem. In it were many beautiful young men and overabundance of food. I wish you would not drag me from it. Lauren fixed him with a look. Jem glared back for a moment, but then his eyes widened. Oh, you mean that sort of dream. Soon he addressed himself, and then he, Chet, and Annis gathered around Lauren in a little circle on the floor. For a moment she felt a rare nostalgia. She knew they must look similar to when the old storyteller Bracken had gathered the children in her village and would gather the children in her village and tell them tales. Keck. Yes, no, I realized I just did. I saw the GIF, I just didn't see that it was you. By the way, I love that chat is entirely composed of mods. We have fun. Mod chat, best chat. Mod chat, mod chat. What brought the dream, said Chet. Was it something that happened yesterday? I've never known what causes the dream, said Lauren. It is nothing I can control, nor has the waking world ever had much influence upon it. It is as though some unseen force jerks on my strings, dragging me this way and that like a puppet. Yet whatever this force is, it seems to want to help us, said Annis. Chet stared at his hands. If the dreams were meant to help, they might have warned us about Naya. They all went silent at that. Chet drew his knees up to his chest. His right hand scrubbed at his left arm, though he was already immaculately clean. One by one, Lauren held them in her gaze. I mean to tell you everything, she said. Everything I saw. No more half-truths. If I had told you everything from the beginning, we might have avoided much sorrow, and then again we might not have. But I think now that avoiding the truth helps no one. But even as she said the words, she winced inside, for there was one thing she could not say, the Maidstones. Jem knew she had them, and knew something of their power, and Lauren had told Annis not long ago, but she still had not told Chet. He worried too much about her as it was, and he was still too righteous. He held a greater respect for the king's law than any of the rest of them. The urchin and the smuggler's daughter took her use of Maidstones in stride, but she knew in her heart of hearts that Chet would not do the same. But the Maidstones had not been an important part of the dream in any case, and so it was easy to avoid mentioning them. She told them all the rest about the mysterious lover in blue, the cruel man in black, and Mag. Jem wept a bit when Lauren mentioned her. Lauren told them every strange place she had visited, the one she had seen in the waking world and the one she had not. Then she came to Chet's part in the dream. Lauren paused. She heard his words again as though he spoke them now. I am leaving you. You cannot follow me any more. Lauren repeated the words exactly. She neither avoided Chet's gaze nor looked at him too closely. Then she paused while Jem and Anna shifted uncomfortably where they sat. Of course, I have seen many things in my dreams, said Lauren. It means nothing, as we all know. Naturally, said Annis. Jem nodded eagerly. But Chet met her gaze for a moment. He quickly looked away, but in that moment she saw an aching sadness within him. As she carried on with the story, he refused to look at her. The dream spoke true, thought Lauren. Sky save me, he is going to leave. It made her pause, her voice faltering to nothing. In the moment's silence, Chet glanced at her by reflex. They looked at each other quietly for a long moment. How could Lauren blame him? He'd never wanted to go on this mad quest in the first place. Chet had only ever wanted to return home with Lauren, there to build a quiet and happy life, letting the world's troubles pass them by. But he had followed Lauren out of love, and he had suffered a fate worse than Lauren could imagine. Auntie had bedded him without leave. He would bear the scar of that always. It was what made him sit in the corner staring past the walls, and what made him scrub at his too clean skin. It was why he could no longer stand to have Lauren touch him. She forced herself to go on. When she finished the tale, Jem shook his head. It is an absolute mess. How are we supposed to read the tale of it? Can you not make any of it a bit more clear? Lauren frowned at him. And how do you think I should do that? I do not control the dreams, Jem. They come when they wish, and they show me whatever they will. I can control my dreams, said Jem, sniffing. Most often I turn into a fire mage and roast my enemies with flame. Can you imagine me as a wizard? No doubt fate kept the gift of magic from me because I had been given such a long list of exceptional qualities already. Who could doubt it, said Lauren evenly. Annis had been sitting in thought after Lauren finished her dream tale. Now she chapped a finger on her chin. The city you described, it sounds like one of the great cities of Dorsey, and the palace you described sounds very like the king's palace in the capital of Danfon. Lauren frowned. But I thought you said your mother would never go there. I thought not, said Annis, shrugging. Too much power is concentrated there, and therefore too many agents of the king's law. She could be seen by any constable or mystic, and then she would be in grave trouble. King June and his royal senate would have been seeking a way to appease the High King. They could hardly think of a greater gift than to capture and turn over the merchant Damaris, one of the most renowned traders in the 9 kingdoms. Then there you have it, said Lauren. Damaris could not have gone to Danfon. It is no more true than the idea of her sitting at a fine table in a snowy courtyard. Yet the dream showed her in Danfon, said Annis. Did you not say that you saw Huel in Dahab, and that is where you found him? I did, said Lauren, but I saw Damaris there too, and we know now that she never went to Dahab. This is still the best clue we have, said Annis, and your example only proves my point. Even when your dreams are unclear, they bring us to Damaris in time. Lauren shook her head. I am not sure. Fetch your map. Let us at least see where Danfon is. Annis hurried to retrieve it. She laid it out on the floor and began to point out markings. This is Feldmar to the north, and here is Sidwan, where we are now. To the northeast is the Moon's Light Pass that leads to Danfon. If we face no delays, we could reach the capital in less than a week. But Lauren's eye was drawn, almost against her will, to another part of the map. She saw the great rocks where they bent south, and little drawings of trees that marked the birchwood. But to the west of the mountains was the name of a place. She could not read it, but she could not draw her eyes from it. As she studied the name in silence, something appeared, a small building, almost like a model built of little sticks. At first she did not recognize it, but then she saw that it was a smithy. Its door was plain wood, but above that was a blue sign with a yellow hammer. Lauren shuddered. The building she had seen in her dream, the smithy in the mountains. Her visions had only ever come to her in dreams, never in the waking world. Was this the same thing, some effect of whatever magic she had, or did her imagination play tricks on her now? Lauren put her forefinger on the map. To her eyes, her finger seemed to pass right through the little smithy. That sent another shiver of fear up her spine. What is this place? Annis frowned. That is Bertram, a sizable city and very important to Dortian trade. Why? Bertram. She had heard the name before. Zane had told her of it in past days when they had conspired to sell the stones. He had mentioned it again just before Lauren left the High King's seat. A smuggler named Weil lived in Bertram, buying and selling goods beyond the King's law. In particular, Zane said the man trafficked in maidstones. I think we should go there, said Lauren slowly. There is a man in Bertram named Weil. Zane told me of him. He is a smuggler, like your family, though I am sure he is less well connected. The others frowned at each other. Lauren knew she must appear mad. But Lauren, said Jem, what does he have to do with Damaris? Lauren shook her head. I do not know. Only I... She swallowed again. She swallowed against a suddenly dry throat. The smithy I saw in my dream. I see it again, right sitting there on the map. A long silence stretched. Jem leaned in closer. Jem leaned in to peer closely at the name of the town as though he expected to see the smithy drawn there. Annis gently pushed him away from the map. That has never happened before, said Chet. No, it has not, said Lauren. Annis would not do that because they are awkward now. No, it is not, said Lauren, but it is happening now, and Zane told me of Weil. This cannot be a coincidence. Annis shook her head. I still do not see how it would help. Weil may be a smuggler, but he is not the criminal we seek, yet he may be a valuable man to know, said Lauren. He must have friends and contacts across Dorsey. He may know something of the family Yerrin's activities. Damaris is gone, and we do not know to where, not for certain. I do not think we will find her by relying on Shion's skill as a tracker, considerable though that skill might be. Mayhap Weil has information that can help. If what Annis says is true, your dream showed us the capital, not Bertram, said Jem. It could have been Bertram, said Annis, pursing her lips. They are both great cities. Bertram has at least one palace that could have been the one Lauren saw. And even if my dream showed me Danfon, the visions are not always clear, said Lauren. In Feldamar, I saw you turn feral and rip out my throat with your teeth. Jem sniffed. I would use a dagger, he muttered. Then his eyes widened. Not that I would ever do such a thing at all, of course. Lauren flipped one of her throwing knives from her belt and pointed it at him. You'd best not try it, but she smiled at him. Annis tilted her head side to side, her expression thoughtful. In any case, Bertram is a good deal closer to where we are now than the capital is. Even if our search there reveals nothing, we will not have wasted much time. Then it is settled, said Lauren. We go to Bertram and then mayhap to the capital. Jem gave a long sigh. More riding for endless leagues, he groused. But Chet sat silently, his arms folded across his knees. His left hand still idly scrubbed at the skin of his right arm, and his gaze looked at something far away. Chet, said Lauren, what is it? He jumped. What? Nothing. Your thoughts seem to be elsewhere. They are, he said, shaking his head. But they are of little consequence. Not to me, said Lauren quietly. Almost she put a hand on his arm, but she stopped herself just in time. He frowned. She could see some battle taking place behind his eyes. I do not think this is a good idea. Annis arched an eyebrow. What, a journey to Bertram? Yes, said Chet. I think you are wrong about it. Annis's voice took on an undercurrent of annoyance. I was not aware you knew much of the great cities of Underrealm. What gives you doubt? Chet's cheeks flushed. I think we should carry on the way we are going. But we have run out of ideas, said Lauren. We do not know what to do if not this. And do you not think that odd? Chet spoke quickly now, his words pouring as though through a widening chink in a dam. That we have pursued Damaris this long, and you dreamless, only to finally have a vision after she's evaded us entirely? But that is a gift, said Jem. Whatever force has granted Lauren these visions, they have given us another just when we needed it most. Chet snorted. Forgive me if I doubt the kindness of whoever has infiltrated Lauren's mind, but it seems no one else is even curious why the dreams come at all. And would you feel the same if the visions did not reveal that you planned to abandon me? The thought came before Lauren could stop it. She hated herself for it, biting her own tongue to keep the words from escaping. Jem opened his mouth to speak again, but Lauren stopped him. Enough, she said, quiet but just sharp enough to halt his words. This is the only plan we have. If we think of a better one, we shall act upon it, but in the meantime we cannot remain in Sidwan until we rot. Chet's gaze darted to her. For a moment she thought he would argue, but then his shoulders sagged. Very well, he muttered, if that is your wish. She gave him a smile, and after a moment they began to pack their things for travel, but Lauren glanced at them as they worked, and her thoughts gave her no peace. Chapter 4 done! Ugh. Forgot how tiring it is to read out loud. Do. Chapter Faith. Faith? Got a little weird formatting thing here I'm trying to fix. There we go. Fixed. Save that setting. Chapter 5. Once Shun and Uzo returned, Lauren told them she meant to ride for Bertram. They accepted the news with silent nods and readied their packs for travel. Lauren wondered what they thought about the sudden change in tack. Thus far in their travels, the party had relied on Shun's tracking. This new course must have seemed strange, but the mystics neither complained nor questioned her. In truth, she had begun to question herself. The visions in her dreams were strange enough, and she drew no closer to understanding them than she had ever been. But the vision of the smithy on the map, that was something new, and it disturbed her even more. What else might she see in the waking world? When something from her dream side appeared in true life, a great unease and disorientation came over her. Sometimes it left her almost unable to act. Now she feared that in a moment of danger she might see something that was not there at all. The thought discomfited her. As the day wore on, she caught Chad and the children stealing glances at her from the corners of their eyes, and she wondered if they thought the same thing. Lauren decided to spend one more night in Sidwan before setting out. Damaris's trail had grown stale, and one more day would make no difference. Since entering Dorsey, they had never spent more than one night in the same place. They needed a rest, and they more than deserved one. A short while before going to bed, Lauren caught Chet's eye. Our quarters grow stuffy. I could use a walk in the fresh air before sleep. Would you come with me? He smiled too quickly, the way he always did these days, and nodded. But he donned his boots slowly, and after they left the room, he walked sluggishly a half-pace behind her. He likely thought she meant to discuss her dream with him. In fact, she wanted to, but she promised herself she would not. They had not spent much time together lately, especially because they had not lain together since Yawamba. Naya's crime, or Auntie's, had left a lasting mark upon him. The mind required time to heal from such a thing, but it also needed help. Few people were better suited to help Chet than Lauren, and more than that, she was partially responsible for what had happened. She owed him more attention than she had given. The town shone in the afternoon light around them. The low sun's red glow bounded from every snowy surface to fly back into their eyes so that Lauren had to squint whenever she turned towards it. Lazy smoke drifted from smokestacks all around, floating up into a clear sky. Lauren hoped the weather remained this fine on their journey. Soon they walked through farmlands. The path south went up a hill and then turned east, bending back and forth at the corners of each farm until it joined the main road that would lead them to Bertram. Here in Dorsey, farmers used small copses of trees to mark the borders of their property. Each time Lauren and Chet walked beneath the branches, it felt for a moment like they walked in the birchwood again. Do you remember Northwood? Said Lauren, the way you used to take me walking each day? Chet's head jerked towards her as she started talking, but her words calmed him, and he gave a genuine smile this time, warm and not too fast. Lauren thrilled to see it on his face again. Of course I do, he said. For a moment his eyes clouded. Those were dark days for you, as these days are for me. It was painful then, said Lauren softly, but it was better to know the truth about my father. Indeed, I think it helped me. I had traveled for months, and I thought I rode a tall horse staring down my nose at those below me who resorted to violence. Little did I know I had made my first kill before I even left home. Chet shook his head. That is not the whole truth, Lauren. I did what I had to, said Lauren. I know. And even after learning the consequence, I have not turned into a killer. Yet it has shaped me. I know now that others, too, do what they must. You are speaking of me and her, said Chet. Lauren shook her head quickly. That was different. For a moment she forgot herself. She reached out to him and took his arm, but Chet jerked away from her as if she had pressed a red-hot poker into his skin. Lauren recoiled, drawing her hands to her chest. I'm sorry, she said. No, it is I who should apologize, said Chet. I've been getting better about it, but still, when I see you, some part of my mind sees. No, Chet, she said, trying to keep her voice kind and firm at the same time. You have never apologized. You did nothing wrong, and you have done nothing wrong since. I am at fault. I have been ignoring you. That is why I wanted to walk with you now, to try and bring back the memory of Northwood when the world was a better place and we were, well, not happy entirely, but happier. So much darkness has come since then. It has, said Chet. His hand rose to his chest, to the place just above his heart where the dagger of a shade had pierced him. It no longer gave him pain, but he would rub at it on occasion, and ever more often since Auntie. Darkness came, but it always passed, but not this darkness, not now. Lauren ached. She wanted to reach out to him, wanted to hold him. She felt the desire constantly. She knew she only meant to help him. Always she had to remind herself that it would not help, that it would only hurt him more. She folded her arms and turned to walk again, keeping her pace slow so that he did not feel the need to hurry. I thought the same thing, after Jordell died, I thought the grief would never leave me. In truth, I suppose it has not, but it has become bearable. Mayhap you can hope for that. Chet was silent for a long moment. Then he stopped walking. Lauren turned and to her shock found him weeping. I do not want to leave you, he whispered. She did not answer at first. She did not trust herself to speak. Tears did not come, but she felt the ache of them in her heart, her throat. They choked her, and she fought to master them. I do not want you to go, she said at last, but I want you to be happy and I want you to be safe. I fear that neither of those may be possible if you remain with me. A sob burst from him and he scrubbed at his eyes with his hand. It was all Lauren could do to keep from embracing him then. I am not faithless, he said. I came with you to find Damaris. That is what all this has been for, and I feel that we are close. Even after learning that she has evaded us, I think I can sense her just in the next town. I want to see it through. Lauren looked down at her feet. Do you think it will help? Help you, I mean? He sucked in another cry as his head swung back and forth. An answer, a rejection, Lauren did not know. She could not hold him. She could not take his hand, so she gestured back toward Sidwan. Come, she said, let us return to the others. We have a long ride tomorrow, and we both need our rest. Chet nodded and walked beside her. By the time they reached the town and returned to the inn, he had mastered his emotions. Likely the others thought his flushed face came from the cold, but Lauren lay awake long into the night, listening for every sound of him shifting on his pallet, wondering if he hid the motion of another silent sob. They set out for Bertram the next day. Lauren thought the folk of Sidwan seemed sorry to see them go. It seemed very likely They set out for Bertram the next day. The folk of Sidwan seemed sorry to see them go. They had likely caused a greater commotion than the town had seen in years. Before leaving, they checked in on the constables one last time. The Yerrin wizard was bound and blindfolded. Maidstone sickness had not yet set in, but Lauren knew it soon would. She did not envy the constables, who would have to remain here to witness it. The other Yerrin sat in a small cell, the only sort of jail for leagues in any direction, and not built to hold 5 prisoners. We shall see to them, said the fat constable with the drooping mustache. Lauren had learned he called himself Ham. The name was almost too appropriate. A letter has been sent to the city of Chun, and some of our brethren will arrive soon to escort them to better holdings. Not the city of Chun. The city of... The city of... Chosun. Set out for Bertram the next day. Lauren thought Sidwan seemed sorry to see him go. It seemed very like... A letter has been sent to the city of Chosun, and some of our brethren will arrive soon to escort them to better holdings. Thank you, said Lauren. Do not forget to tell them of the Mind Maid. She will no longer be so dangerous as she was, but no wizard should be trifled with. Ham shuddered. I will remember it. Thank you, Nightblade. Lauren gave him a sharp look. She had not told him that title. No doubt this was some work of Jem's. Glancing back, she saw the boy's crooked teeth flashing in a grin. You're welcome, Constable, said Lauren. Your service will not be forgotten. He puffed up his chest and saluted with his hand over his heart. Lauren gave him a final nod and led her party out of the town. The road to Bertram was easy enough, though somewhat slower because of the snow. The king paid local workers to clear it away from time to time, but they had not done so since the last snowfall. Sometimes Lauren's party had to cut into the countryside to avoid a large drift that had piled up. They rode as long as they could while the sun was high, and each night they stopped early enough to gather firewood before dark. At first, Lauren had been hesitant to light fires, but Sheena had advised it. Bandits are more active during winter, she said, but they are not likely to trifle with our party. At least 4 of us look like we can fight. Jem glowered. I would say 5. She arched an eyebrow. As you say. In any case, I think they will leave us alone. Our greatest foe is the cold. One night, Lauren and Jem went out to fetch firewood together, taking Chet's hatchet with them. Lauren cut down dead-looking branches and piled them into Jem's arms, and soon the boy had a sizable stack. Once he might have struggled with such a burden, but now he bore it easily. Over their long journey together, he had shot up like a weed, and he had begun to grow some muscle as well. I've been meaning, Jem began. He cleared his throat and tried again. I've meant to ask if I might start taking a watch at night. Lauren looked at him in surprise. That would be most welcome, she said carefully, but mayhap we will pair you with someone else, at least to start. I would hate to wake in the morning and find you had fallen asleep. Jem scowled at her. Do you think I cannot remain awake when I wish to? I would never say such a thing, said Lauren, keeping her face carefully neutral, except that I would, for you have tried standing a watch before, with me, in the Great Rocks. I had to nudge you thrice an hour. You enjoy your rest, Master Urchin. His scowl deepened, and what wise man would not? Lauren chuckled. The boy's insouciance and seemingly bottomless cheer had been a comfort through many dark times. She wondered how she had ever thought to leave him behind as she had long ago. A journey without Jem seemed a foreign concept after they had ridden so many leagues together, and the same went for Annis. At that thought, Lauren turned to regard Jem carefully. I've been meaning to speak with you as well, but of another matter. How long do you and Annis mean to keep up this strain between you? Jem's cheeks and ears grew bright red, and he ducked his gaze. It is not something either of us have planned exactly, I think. And I notice it has not been pleasant for either of you. That goes for the rest of us as well. He sighed. I know it. You know what happened is not your fault, nor is it Annis's. You know that what happened is not your fault, nor is it Annis's. Either if you blames the other or yourself. Jem shook his head quickly. Of course not. I know that. Only is that not the worst part, when no one is to blame? If she had done something wrong, I could take her to task for it. If I had done something wrong, outlandish as the notion might seem, I suppose she could do the same to me. And then there might at last be an end to the discomfort. But neither of us have done anything wrong, and so what can we do to fix it? His words were all too familiar to Lauren. She had said something very similar to Zane back on the High King's seat. Many whom she held dear had left her, one way or another. First Jordell, then Albern and Mag, and finally Zane. Yet they had had no choice. Jordell, Albern, and Mag had been slain, all of them in defense of Lauren and her friends. Zane had been reunited with his son and had remained on the seat to see to the boy's safety. None of them had any choice in what they had done, and Lauren had had no choice but to move on. Yet that had not diminished the pain of their parting, and in some ways had only inflamed it. It had taken her a long time before she could think of them with anything but heartache. Mayhap it only requires a bit more work, she said, on both your parts, I mean. Finding a way to turn your friendship warm and easy again, the way it used to be. Jem looked down at his boots. Then he shrugged, feigning a nonchalance Lauren knew he did not feel. In any case, I suppose it was foolish of me not to predict such an outcome. I should have known long ago that Annis would confess such feelings for me. Lauren cocked her head. Because of the way she acted? She has fawned on you almost from the moment you met. She has? Jem's eyes went saucer-wide. I have not seen that, nor is it what I meant. I mean only, well, how could any young maiden keep herself from desiring such a man? He held the bundle of sticks in one hand while gesturing at himself with the other. Lauren kept herself from cuffing his ear, but it was a mighty struggle. Still, she felt the need to pierce the bubble of his high opinion of himself. I hope she did nothing wrong by it, but Annis told me something of your conversation, and she made some mention of Uzo. It worked. Jem deflated at once, and his cheeks flushed anew. Yes, well, he is very... He is, said Lauren, nodding. Uzo is indeed a beautiful young man, though she had never felt the same connection towards him that she had with Chet, or with Naya, whispered her mind, though she quickly banished that thought. But unless it has happened without my noticing, I do not think that you have said anything more to Uzo than Anna said to you for a long while. You have not missed anything, said Jem with a sigh. I may think very highly of myself, and with good reason, but I hold no illusions about Uzo. He scarcely seems to notice me, and when he does, he seems to regard me mostly with annoyance. And besides, how old do you think he is? What would he want from one who is scarcely more than a boy? You are not much younger than I am, and Uzo is not much older, said Lauren. Yet I see what you mean. He is a soldier, after all, and from what little he has told us about himself, I do not think a great romance is something he desires. Well, I long for such a romance enough for the both of us, said Jem. He looked up at the sky as if searching for strength. The firewood almost fell from his hands. But I suppose that is my lot. I think every great scholar and artist and warrior, and sometimes medica, only lives a more complete and fulfilling life if they have suffered a great unrequited love in their youth. Again, Lauren's hand twitched, itching to slap the back of the boy's head. No doubt, she said instead. It seems almost a requirement. Her thoughts went to her dreams again, the way they so often did these days. She saw Jem's terrible snarl, the way his face twisted in a rage she had never seen there in the waking world. Her head twitched as she felt his teeth tearing at her throat. She cut down another branch, but after she put it atop the pile, she took the firewood from his arms and set it down on the ground. Then she took Jem by the shoulders and turned him to face her. He looked up at her, though they were getting near to a height of each other now, and they remained that way for a little while, studying each other in silence. You know that I care for you, do you not? Said Lauren. You are one of my dearest friends. I will never stop looking after you. Jem's brow furrowed. What under the sky are you talking about? It is my job to look after you, not the other way around. Lauren shook her head. Your wit is one of my favorite things about you, but be serious for a moment. I do not jest. His mouth worked. Without warning, he leaped forth, wrapping his arms around her in embrace. I know it, he said, and you may be my favorite person in all the world, and that is quite a statement, as I have seen so much of it. She patted his hair gently. Good. I never want you to forget it. Jem drew back and looked up at her, and she saw recognition in his eyes. This is about your dream, about how you have seen me attack you. Lauren nodded, suddenly nervous to speak. Then take my vow, though I have given you one before. I vow never to do you harm. I would end my own life first. He cocked his head and pursed his lips, though I would rather not do that either, if it is at all possible. Lauren smirked and embraced him again. And I command you never to do so. I only wanted you to know how high in esteem I hold you in. As long as you know it, I am satisfied. He bounced on his feet and stooped to gather up the firewood. Then be satisfied. Only we should be getting back, for I am sure the others will not be happy until they have had a chance to warm their frozen limbs. She smiled and hung the hatchet at her belt, leading him back towards the camp, but a shadow remained over her heart. She had told Jem of her dreams, yes, but she had left one thing out, something she had only realized recently. Whenever she saw Jem turn vicious with rage and attack her, he had been a grown man. It means nothing, she told herself. Do you trust your dreams more than the boy at your side? Lauren glanced at him and hoped she believed her own answer. Chapter 6. Chapter 5 done. BT dub. 2 days into their journey, the road began to wend through the western foothills of the Great Rocks. The skeletal trees grew fewer and farther between, giving way to an open but hilly landscape that must have been brilliant green in summer, but was now a dead, dark brown where it was not covered in snow. After 4 days of hard riding, they emerged through a great cleft in the earth onto a highland, and there they came to Bertram at last. The city had been built at the confluence of 2 rivers that came leaping down out of the Great Rocks to the east. The waters joined to form the Fanrong, which ran west to Dorsey's coast to meet the Western Sea. It did? It what? I don't think my map says that. No, it does not. There we go. Okay. City had been built at the confluence of two rivers came leaping down a Grey Rock Sea east. The waters joined to form the Fanrong, which ran west to Dorsey's coast to meet the Western Sea. No kingdoms contested that coastline, and Dorsey drew great wealth from its fertile lands. Eventually, that wealth spread through the rest of the kingdom by way of the river. Okay, I have to end at this point for the dizzle. Well, for the afternoon, anyway. Oh, because I have some stuff to do before 4 o'clock. Oh, chunking our way through the final read-through. I definitely want to put more time in on this over the next couple of days. Got a book up for pre-order. Got an email out to peeps. Got pre-orders starting to come in. Everything's very exciting. Thanks for tuning in for the stream, everyone. Hope to see you. Hope to see you on the next one. That's what I was going for there. Yeah. We're so close to done, and then we get to start on Chronicles. Thanks for watching, everybody. Catch you next time. Bye. Oh, you know what? Let me see if there's anybody I want to host. Her be sure to defer, but defer, sure, bird. Who's cool and exciting right now? The only people that are up are HCC and Grubby. But, so we'll skip it for now. Alright. Catch you later, everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye.